Hi everybody, this is Kevin and welcome back to another video. And today, I would like to share my thoughts on Final Fantasy VI. After finishing my replay with the Pixel Remaster version, the first thing I want to say is when people tell me that Final Fantasy VI is their favorite Final Fantasy game of all time or even favorite game of all time, I have nothing else to say than I agree, because this game is even better than I remember it being, an absolute masterpiece. And as someone such as myself who has played all these games before, but sort of out of order, and now with the Pixel Remasters over the past year or so, really last year I played through 1 and 2, and then the past month and a half I played 3, 4, 5, and 6 back to back. You can really see where they improve upon things, how the series just gets better and better, the introduction of certain things, like, of course, we mentioned the job system in Final Fantasy III and how it was improved upon again in Final Fantasy V, and then even to a lesser extent, the job system is still sort of there in Final Fantasy VI when we talk about the Espers and the magic system. Also, the character themes, how 4 introduced that, having the music tracks for, Rosa, Rydia, Edge, Kain, etc. And then in 5, Gilgamesh had his own theme, Milena. In Final Fantasy VI, every character has their own theme, and it's fantastic to, see them again and associate a certain musical note with each character. Just really terrific writing, how they're able to convey messages in that sort of way. But an absolute masterpiece. This video is going to be a bit long, so we're going to break it up into 2 sections. I'll do my spoiler-free thoughts now, and then once I get to the slideshow, because there's a lot of images I want to share, particularly the ending of the game, we'll have to go into spoiler territory. But I'll also start by saying that this game is now over 30 years old. Just this past April, it celebrated its 30-year anniversary, because the game released back in 1994 on the Super Nintendo, and here we are in 2024, so that's just crazy, man. It just goes to show you, if a game is well made, it'll stand the test of time for decades. And another 10 years from now, I think people will still be playing Final Fantasy VI, some people even discovering it for the first time, and they'll be like, wow, this game is a masterpiece, which it is. But of course, similar to the other Final Fantasy games that we've covered over the past few weeks, it was also re-released on a number of consoles. The PlayStation in 1999, which that was the Anthology Edition, bundled with Final Fantasy V. And there were some CGI cutscenes there, mainly for the character introductions, the intro, and then the ending. And I think they even did a CGI cutscene for the opera scene, which they redid the opera scene with the Pixel Remaster version here. And I got goosebumps just watching it. It was so good. I was looking into more details there because, of course, Nobuo Uematsu did the arrangements, redoing all the songs. You could listen to the classic SNES or the arrangement. But with the opera scene, in the original version, they had the sounds where it sounded like the characters were singing. In this case, they actually got someone to perform and sing the lyrics. And they did it in multiple languages. I played the game in English, but I was looking up just before this review here. There's a almost 30-minute video of all the different performances, and they did it in not only English, but Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Spanish, French, Italian. The Italian one is really good, and German. And maybe another language is there as well that I'm forgetting, but just incredible how they redid that. And it was beautiful. If you played the game before, I strongly recommend going to watch that, and I think you'll get goosebumps watching it as well, just like I did. But it was also released on the Game Boy Advance in Japan in 2006, and then in North America in 2007, which was the version I played. And looking at that, 2007, that's after Nintendo DS was released, which I think was that either 2005 or 2006. It was right around there. So they were still making Game Boy Advance games well into the DS's lifespan, which is pretty crazy. And then, of course, again, on phones, on Android and iOS, and then Windows. They did a really shitty Steam version in 2015, but now it's been remedied with the Pixel Remaster version. But where to even begin with the story? You know, it's so interesting. This Final Fantasy game actually has the largest cast of playable characters in 14 playable characters. And this was still when, Sakaguchi was involved all the way up until Final Fantasy X. I think he did some executive producer, he had some executive producer role in Final Fantasy X, but 9 was like his swan song, because that paid homage to all the other Final Fantasies. So Sakaguchi was heavily involved with Final Fantasy VI, and because there were so many characters, they had a bunch of different people write the backstories and the scenarios for each character. Like, for instance, Sakaguchi was behind Terra, Locke, and I think Gao. Yoshinori Kitase was behind Cyan, among a few others. My man Tetsuya Nomura was behind Shadow, Setzer, and Go-Go. And then even Kari Tanaka, also known as Sorya Saga, that was her pen name, and the wife of Tetsuya Takahashi, the creator behind the Xeno games, Xenogears, Xenosaga, and the Xenoblade Chronicles games. She was the one behind Edgar and Sabin. And a really interesting note about that is their middle names, the two brothers, Edgar Roni Figaro and Sabin Rene Figaro. There are actually two characters named Roni and Rene Fatima in Xenogears, the descendants of the Fatima dynasty and the descendants of Bart, who show up in Xenogears. So it shows as far back as Final Fantasy VI 1994, which I think Xenogears was at either 96 or 97. It laid the groundwork there. And also how they're in the desert castle in Figaro, and then the desert, that's kind of where you find Bart. And oh, it's just so cool to see all that and how everything's connected. And she actually, I think she did like a manga or something with the two of them that was never released, but there's scans of it online if you're interested. So really cool stuff there. There's kind of been an ongoing debate about the characters over the years as to who the main character really is. But the way I've always looked at it was that, you know, you have the first and second half of the game, the world of balance and the world of ruin. And in the first half, Terra is definitely the main protagonist, whereas in the second half it's Celis, because, you know, the way I look at it, Terra, you control her in the very beginning, and then the second half, Celis is the first character you control. And you also have, like, Locke has more of an important role, Edgar and Sabin, Cyan, Setzer, whereas characters like Mog and Umaru and Go-Go, they're kind of, I don't think, well, Umaru and Go-Go are missable. They're like the optional party members. But Mog, there's a scenario with him in the first half where you can choose whether or not you want to save him or save Lone Wolf and get the, was it the gold hairpin accessory? It was some kind of accessory. But of course you want to save Mog, which I think this is the first instance of that, in that Mog joins the party, a Moogle. And before that, you've always had human characters. But ever since then, there seems to be some sort of, like, beast or, you know, creature who joins the party. Because in Final Fantasy VII, you have Red 13. In Final Fantasy IX, you have the frog creature, Quina. In Final Fantasy X, you have Kimari. And that's really all I can think of right now. But you get the idea. So it's cool that it started in Final Fantasy VI, and I'm surprised there hasn't been another Moogle party member in the other games. We're due for that, I think. But you have that. And, you know, people always talk about how Final Fantasy's always been open world. I mean, in Final Fantasy VI, the game is very linear in the first half, in that, you know, you got to go from here, point A to point B, and then eventually in the second half it opens up where you recruit the party members, although you still have to recruit the same three in order, and then it opens up. So yeah, I guess it does have an open world aspect, but in the beginning it's always been linear. And I do like, because the cast is so large, there's multiple instances where you have to break the party up, in particular the final dungeon, and that you have to make 3 parties of 4, so you have to leave 2 behind, which I left Umaru and Go-Go behind because they're kind of the least relevant as far as the party members go. But there's also the Phoenix Cave, where you have to split the party into 2. There's early on in the game when you get separated and you have to do the scenario where you have Locke meet Celis, you have Sabin goes on his adventure with Shadow, and then meets Cyan, and then Gao, of course. So, lots of great stuff. And then, how could I forget to mention Kefka? One of the best villains, not even just in Final Fantasy, but just in general. He's definitely better than Sephiroth. I mean, everyone always says Sephiroth is the best Final Fantasy villain. Kefka, man. Because the thing with Kefka is he's just straight evil. There's no tragic backstory around him. Although, I guess, you know, wasn't he manipulating with the Espers, given his magical abilities, so that drove him insane? I think that's his backstory, but he's just insane, and he just kills people for the fun of it. He has this crazy laugh. So, Kefka's a great villain. And what I think's so good about him, too, is in the first half, you see him a lot. You're always running into him, and you have a few battles against him. But in the second half of the game, you don't even see him until the final dungeon, which is just crazy. But Kefka, great villain. Great game. I love Final Fantasy VI. This is my spoiler-free review. I strongly recommend. Go pick it up if you haven't played it already. Get all the old Final Fantasy games with the Pixel Remaster versions and play them all in order from 1 to 6, and you'll really appreciate where they introduced things for the first time and what they improved upon. And this really is like the swan song of the Pixel games. Of course, from here we go to 7 to the 3D, and ever since then, they've always been pushing the graphical limit, and you know, you see where they are now with Final Fantasy 16 and how realistic that game is, and the budget that game cost, and just everything about it. So Final Fantasy has always strived to improve in that regard, and yeah, it's incredible to go back to a game that's 30 years old and see how well it holds up. And in my opinion, it exceeded my expectations. I had high expectations upon this replay, like, oh, you know, this game is great, I can't wait. But it was even better than I was expecting, so can't recommend it enough. Now I'm going to go through my slideshow and talk more about the story, so for those still watching, I hope you enjoy. So let's start here at the beginning. We had the iconic intro with the Magitech armor, which Tetsuya Takahashi, we mentioned him before, he worked with Square for a long time. I think he started with either Final Fantasy IV or Final Fantasy V, and he was a map designer. But he was the one who designed the mech here, which that would inspire him again when he went on with Xenogears and the Xenosaga games. So I thought that was cool, worth mentioning. I like when each character was introduced, they have a little thing about them, and you can name them whatever you want, but I went with all the default names, of course. Terra, though I think there was a mistranslation in the original version where she was called Tina, which is pretty funny. And actually in Final Fantasy V, they called Bart's Butts, if you can believe that. But there's Locke, and there's a funny thing early on, too, where they keep calling him a thief, and he's like, no, that's Treasure Hunter, I'm a treasure hunter. And similar to Final Fantasy V with the expressions on their face, and he's doing a shocked look, and he's sweating a little. Just so good, man. Let's see what's next. The Moogles, of course, Kupo, which that was a tutorial early on where you actually controlled the different parties there. There were 3 Moogle parties with Mog there, and Mog was the most powerful. So I guess that's your foreshadow that, okay, Mog will eventually join. But it sort of shows you that you are going to be splitting your parties up quite a bit. Here's my favorite JRPG trope. You've got amnesia. I think every Final Fantasy game, except for one, the characters have had amnesia in one form or another. I love it in Final Fantasy 3. It was, and Final Fantasy 5 too. But in 3, it was Dice. She's like, I'm just gonna be straight with you. I've got amnesia. And then Galuf had amnesia too. Good stuff. There's Edgar and Sabin, the brothers Figaro. There's Kefka. There's sand on my boots, you son of a submariner, which they turned that into son of a sandworm. Shadow. Oh, Shadow's theme was so good too, like the boom, boom, boom. It's like the Western music in the background. Ultros is like the Gilgamesh of this game. Not as cool as Gilgamesh, but still funny nonetheless. There's Celis, best girl. Absolutely. I do like how Locke, he's and Edgar too, they're kind of ladies' men. But Locke in particular, he has a thing for Terra. But once he meets Celis, you could tell, like, oh, and he shifts his attention to her, which I always thought was funny. There's Cyan. Cyan's such a badass. You know, Final Fantasy has always sort of had, like, the boomer in the party. Like, I think one that people always talk about is Cid from Final Fantasy VII. And I guess from Final Fantasy V, going back a bit, you had Galuf. But Cid from Final Fantasy VII, and he's only in his 30s, which Cyan's in his 50s, and they kind of make him to be an old man in the way he speaks, like, thou. You know, Gao calls him Mr. Thou, because he keeps saying thou. But later on, you meet another dude named Strago, who's 70 years old. So it's like, whoa, the trope of the 30 and 40-year-old boomer just went out the window, because now we have the 70-year-old boomer. But Cyan, I love the whole sequence at Doma Castle, when it shows that the Empire is evil, but there's still honorable people there in General Leo and then Celis, where they're with the bad guys for whatever the reason might be, but they have integrity. And General Leo's like, now Kefka, I have to go, but don't you dare poison the water. And of course, Kefka's going to listen to that, so he poisons the water. And just the music that was playing and the urgency Cyan had of going to check his wife and kid and checking the king. And then everything's thrown out the window. He's like, I'm going, I don't give a fuck if I die. And he stands his ground. He's like, I am the retainer to the king of Doma. I fear not even death. And he starts fighting, and then Sabin and Shadow help him. So that was pretty cool. Oh, and then you go to the Phantom Train. You can recruit the Ghost, and you run into Siegfried, who is also another wannabe Gilgamesh, which he starts like huffing and puffing for this attack, and he does like 1 or 2 damage. Not enough yet? Yeah, okay, bro. And the iconic suplexing the train, which they renamed the suplex to Meteor Strike, which I was kind of bumming about that, because suplex is so iconic. But it is what it is. You can still suplex the train, which is kind of funny because there's certain creatures that you can't suplex because it takes in effect like if they're flying. You know, you can't suplex a flying monster, but you can suplex a train because it's bound to the ground, I suppose. And it's just such an over-the-top animation. So there's Gao who joins the party. And again, like obviously we mentioned who the main characters were later on, but you still get a lot of great development for even what you might think as an insignificant character in Gao, because, you know, he just sort of, he's a wild child. He's been living on the veldt. And with him, you meet a man later who's in a cabin, and he's talking about, you know, are you the repairman, are you going to fix the clock? And later on, the second half of the game in the World of Ruin, you get, like, the backstory that it's actually Gao's father, and you dress Gao up in a suit and tie, and it's a really sweet scene. So there we have Ramuh turning himself into the Esper. That was, you also got the backstory of Terra, how her mother is a woman, a human named Madeline, and her father is an Esper, a summon from the Esper world named Maduin. I always found that interesting how the mother is named Madeline and then the father Maduin. And so she's half human, half Esper. And her power awakens in her when she confronts the frozen Esper at the top of Narsh. And she goes berserk, eventually finds Ramuh. And then Ramuh says, alright, I'll help you. And he turns himself into Magicite. And that's where you sort of get the pseudo-job system of Final Fantasy VI. In that, like, the characters have their jobs already, similar to Final Fantasy IV. You know, Terra and Celis are the magic users, and then later on, Terra can transform into her Esper form and use stronger magic. Celis uses the runic ability to absorb enemy magic attacks. Sabin is a monk who can use blitz commands. Cyan is the samurai, can use Bushido. You have Gao, who is the feral child who you can go to the Veldt and he can learn rage abilities from the other enemies. Mog has the dance ability, which is similar to the Geomancer from Final Fantasy III and Final Fantasy V. Edgar has his tools. Locke is a thief. He can steal. Shadow can throw. There's so many different abilities that the characters have. But with the Magicite and the Espers, you can teach them any spell in the game. I think the only characters who can't learn magic are Umaru and Gogo. And Umaru is just a berserker, all he does is attack. Whereas Gogo is the mime, so he just mimics whoever's in your party. So You can turn Gao into the white mage if you want to, but I always use the characters the way they were intended, so I do like that. There's Setzer. Oh, I love Setzer, man. Awesome. I always love that how he was a character in the Kingdom Hearts games, too. Like, he seems kind of obscure. You know, of course they have Cloud and Squall and Sid and characters like that, but they brought Setzer in Kingdom Hearts, too, and I always loved that. But we have to find Setzer, of course, because he has the blackjack, the airship, and it wouldn't be a Final Fantasy game without the airship. So to do that, we have Celis impersonate Maria at the opera, and you get this really cute scene. Again, I love the expressions of the characters in their pixel art, and they're all like, alright, you're gonna be Maria, you gotta perform, Celis. And she's stuttering, hold on there, I'm a former general, not some opera floozy. And later on, you go into the changing room after she's in her opera attire, and Locke's face gets all red, and he's like, were you always this pretty? It's like, yes, she was. So eventually you get the opera scene, which I'll have it linked in the description. Go check out all the different languages. It's close to 30 minutes. I think they did 8 different languages. Absolutely incredible. You see the angle here? They redid this entire scene, and they had people singing. They had actual performers singing the song. Incredible. I got goosebumps watching it. It was such a great scene. And it was great in the original version, but it's even better with the Pixel Remaster. So after the performance, Ultros shows up, and this reminded me of Dragon Ball Z when Frieza said, you have 5 minutes until Namek explodes. Like, what are you doing, Ultros? So after you defeat, and there's a 5-minute timer, by the way, but after you defeat Ultros, Setzer shows up, and he's gonna claim Maria. Like, you go. And I always love this line, so in order to get Setzer to join, Celis borrowed Edgar's coin and said, you know, heads you join, tails you go on your merry way. And of course it was heads because it was a double-sided coin, and that's where you get more character development about when Edgar and Sabin's father died and someone had to inherit the throne. They had the same wager, and Edgar inherited the throne so Sabin could go on his way and train as a martial artist like he always wanted to do. And you get some great development there. I just love this line, too, where Setzer says, gambling against the Empire, with nothing to lose but my own life. I haven't felt so excited in years. I just love that line so much, man. It's so good. And this is where you get, like, the backstory about the coin. And when Sabin realizes, like, the coin, it's always been like that. And you see how Edgar nods his head, like, in shame almost. How he lied to his brother, but he had to. There's Mog, who joins the party, and he actually reveals that he learned the human language from Ramo. So, and then people who already played the game, like myself, I noticed Umara was hiding in his cave over there, which he joins in the world of Ruin. There's Strago. Oh, I didn't even, because there's so many characters, but Strago, he's the blue mage in this game. He can learn the enemy abilities. And Realm, his granddaughter. And this is the line where Strago says, he's only 70! He's as fit as a fiddle! Like, okay, boomer. So you get some funny lines of Ultros. Uncle Ulti! And after a nice moment like that, Kefka shows up and wreaks havoc. And, you know, my one, if I'm going to have a nitpick here, I'll have it right here. You actually control General Leo for this one battle against Kefka. And Kefka kills General Leo. But I really didn't feel anything for that. I feel like there was a whole sequence when you go to Tomasa looking for the Espers. And I feel like you should have had Leo join the party for a dungeon or two. Because you had Terra, Celis, Locke, and Shadow. But then Shadow leaves for a bit, and that's when Strago and Realm joins. You should have had Leo in the party for like a dungeon. That way, you use him for a bit. And then when Kefka kills him, it's like, oh, you took away Leo. Why would you do that? So, I don't know. It kind of just felt cheap in my opinion. But still, it just shows how evil Kefka is. And he kills everybody. And then eventually, you have to go to the floating continent and stop him from reviving the Warring Triad. And you get another difficult choice where you have to escape. And again, I think it was another 5-minute timer If you escape without waiting for Shadow, Shadow dies, and you can't recruit him in the second half because Shadow is the one who buys us time. But if you wait for 5 seconds, Shadow shows up again, and you're all able to escape. And then eventually, the airship gets destroyed. The world is torn asunder, and you see once you start playing in the world of Ruin, the whole continent's moved around, and 1 year has passed. There's another choice you have here where you can... I chose to let Sid die, but what you have to do is you have to feed fish to Sid, and you go to the beach to catch them, and there's certain fish that move faster than others. Those are the healthy fish, and then the fish that move slowly are the unhealthy, diseased fish. So if you get him the good fish, he'll survive. If not, he dies. And another interesting note is, like, all the monsters have changed in the world of Ruin, but it's not just because your level's increased. The world is sick now that it's turned evil and been destroyed by Kefka, and there's some weak monsters who you'll run into, and you don't even have to attack them, they just die. They have their HP is being drained from their sickness, which is, again, great story and development in a little known way. Like, you know, they don't outright tell you, but you can just see, like, these monsters are diseased. They're just dying without me attacking. I thought that was interesting. But you get this really tragic scene where Celis recounts, because there's some more dialogue with Sid, where he talks about how there was more people on the island with them, but one by one they went to the cliff and just killed themselves. They jumped off the cliff and put an end to it. And after Sid passed away, which it's been a while since I played the game, so I don't even remember how different it is if Sid survives, but I just feel like it's more impactful for Sid to die. So Celis is going to do it as well. She goes up there and you see the other bird is dead, and she says there's nothing left for me in the world. She jumps off. However, she doesn't die. She just passes out for a bit, and once she wakes up, she sees another bird with a blue bandana, and it's like, whoa, is that Locke's bandana? So she goes off, she finds the raft that Sid had in the cabin, and makes her way to the nearest town, to which we run into Sabin. And I love this line right here. Do you think a little thing like the end of the world was gonna do me in? Hell no. And Sabin is holding up this collapsed building because there's some children inside, and then Celis has to go there and save them, and Sabin agrees to join the party, and then we end up running into Gerard. Sorry, I always thought it was Gerard, but there's only one R, and it's Edgar's name rearranged, and he's working with the prisoners who are in Figaro Castle to get back to Figaro Castle to reclaim it, but he's not going to tell them that he's Edgar, so he's playing dumb, and once we follow him there, he reveals that it's Edgar. What are you standing around for? Give me a hand! So now we have 3 party members. And this order, I think, is you have to do this because you have to get the airship. But your 4th party member is always going to be Setzer. And he's sitting here wasting away in the bar, just drinking himself. And we talk some sense into him. He says, you chase after it with me then, my new dream. And he agrees. And again, you get some more awesome backstory because when you got the blackjack, it was assumed that was the only airship. But Setzer had a lover named Daryl way back when, who had passed away, I think, a year before the World of Ruin. So, yeah, she passed away in a flying accident. She had another airship named the Falcon, and it was buried down in her tomb. So they go down there and reclaim the Falcon, and you get this awesome dialogue. We're going to begin searching for our friends, and that's actually the name of the overworld theme once you get the airship now, searching for friends. And that's really the second half of the game. From this point on, you can essentially go right to Kefka's tower and challenge the final boss, but you can't do it just 4. You got to find the rest of your friends. So you got to begin the hunt and go to all the towns that you previously visited in different locations, and it's just some awesome stuff. So who is next? Next up was Cyan. And he agrees, I shall go with you. We must not abandon the world to Kefka. You find Gao on the Veldt again. I join you again. Oh, Gao. And then Terra, which there was a great subplot with Terra where she was looking after these children. in the village of Mobley's, and one of the demons whom Baba keeps attacking, but Terra has grown weak in the past year because she hasn't used her abilities, and she wonders what she's even fighting for. But after struggling and realizing that the children are in danger, she's like, I'm fighting for the children, and I finally realized what love is. And excellent character development for her. Then we run into Realm again. This is at the auction house, and she's doing paintings or whatever. You can try and find Strago first, but he won't join you until Realm's in the party. And you get her, and he's at the cultist tower with the cult of Kefka. And she smacks him sense into the old man. Come on, you stubborn old bag of bones! Like, he's just walking in a straight line with these guys. It's just crazy. Mog joins, which, again, another really sad scene here, where Mog is standing. If you examine that tile, you'll find Mululu's pendant, which is heavily implied that Mululu was either Mog's wife or his lover or whoever, and she had passed away, because in this area here, you see the nest. That's where all the other Moogles were in the first half of the game, but now Mog is the only one, so it's assumed that all the other Moogles died, which is just so sad. Umaro joins, which Mog is like, get Umaro. I'll boss him around. He's my servant. And Umaro, Mog says, I'm your boss, Kupo. You're gonna join us, Kupo. And then Umaro's like, oh, yes, boss. Yes, boss. Umaro doesn't really have much to do, but it's still funny nonetheless. I never used him in the party, but, there's Shadow, which he's still kicking. Locke rejoins. You actually have to find him in the Phoenix Cave. And that was the other subplot. He found the Phoenix Magicite. He had his other lover named Rachel, who he was on a treasure hunting expedition with her years ago. And she fell and had amnesia and lost her memory. And, her parents hated Locke after that. She didn't remember anything. And before she tragically passed away, the last thing she said was Locke's name. So Locke has some other contacts, and some crazy guy was looking after her, had her body comatose, and then he used the Phoenix Magicite to say a few things to her before she finally passed on. So, again, more great story there. There's Gogo who joins. You actually, a weird way you recruit Gogo. You go to this island, and you run into this monster called the Zone Eater, and you let the Zone Eater eat you. And you go inside the dungeon in his stomach, and Gogo is there. So he joins. So that's the final party. Again, a huge cast of characters. I use pretty much everyone except for Mog, Gao, Gogo, and Umaro. But everyone else I tried to switch in and use evenly. I always love using Cyan because he has the one Bushido ability called Tempest, which it hits 4 times, and once you get him really powerful, he does 9,999 damage every time, times 4. So Cyan, extremely overpowered. Sabin, of course, as well. And I always liked using Celis, too. She's my favorite character. There's Gao in his suit where he meets his father again. He got him all dressed up. Did they comb his hair, too? It looks like they combed his hair. And, you get the backstories with Shadow again. There's so much great content with all these characters. I skipped over to Cyan because his wife and kid died at the hands of Kefka's poison, but you can go back to Doma Castle into the dream sequence and you see them again. And then also you go to the ancient castle, you get the Odin Magicite. But there's a theory because when you first meet Realm, Interceptor takes a liking to her. And Shadow said before that, Interceptor doesn't like anybody but him, and especially doesn't like kids, but Interceptor likes the young girl. And with the dreams, you learn that Shadow's real name is Clyde, and he had a partner named Barum. And you see right here, look after my daughter, and before that, they were talking about Tomasa, and who's the young girl who lives in Tomasa? It's Realm, so yeah, that's the theory. Oh yeah, so, and of course, all the other Magicite you go around. I guess the main quest, too, aside from bringing the world back to order and stopping Kefka, is to defeat the legendary dragons. I think, was there 9 of them, or was there 7? One of them is Doomgaze, so you fly around and you'll run into him. In the original, you just had to fly around the airship and you run into him at random, but in this version, the Pixel Remaster, you can actually see him, so that was cool. And that's the final battle. So I have one more thing. We're going to go through the entire ending because there's just so much great stuff there. So at the final battle, again, I mentioned how we didn't see Kefka until the final dungeon, and here he is, welcome friends. He's been practicing his greeting. And I wasn't sure if this was always the case or because I had Celes as my leader for Party 1. But Celes is the one who eventually confronts Kefka, so if someone can let me know if that's always been the case or if it's just who you choose for the leader for your first party. But Celes approaches him and realizes that there's something worth protecting. And then Kefka, did you find your something in the broken world? And yeah, everyone really did, you know, and they all have a little piece that they say. So Celes says yes. And you see Terra, love, she found love. Locke found a person worth protecting. Cyan, a wife and child who live on with me. Shadow, friends, ... and family. So that's again the connection to Realm. Edgar, a peaceful kingdom. Sabin, a loving brother who always looks out for me. Ha ha ha. Oh yeah, the two brothers. Celes, someone willing to accept me for who I am. Strago, an adorable little granddaughter. Realm, an obnoxious grandpa who I couldn't live without. Setzer, wings from a dear old friend. Mog, new pals, Kupo. Gao, these people, all of them. Whoa! And Kefka's all pissed off. I wonder what Umaro and Gogo would say. Again, I didn't bring them, so I don't know. I guess I can look it up, but I love how they all said their piece, and they all did find something in the broken world. So you eventually fight him. He's wreaking havoc. And, my final party's a little strange, and then it's Shadow, Mog, Edgar, and Sabin. Hey, it is what it is, but we defeated him, and Kefka, like, turned into a god. So after you defeat him, you get in the airship, and you get this excellent sequence where as it shows each character, it plays all their themes. So there we have Cyan, and again, Cyan's a bit of a boomer, so he's technologically illiterate, and Edgar, hit the switch! Mechanical devices are not my strong point. Setzer, and this was great too, so Setzer flipped the coin, and it said to go into the left door, but then he goes to the right. Whenever you think you're right, you're wrong. Oh, Setzer, the legend. And talking about Daryl again. Edgar, Ronnie, Figaro. And then Sabin, Renee, Figaro. Look at the double-sided coin. Heads on both sides. So good, man. Mog. Oh, help me, Kupo! Watch the fur! Umaro, wait, what does Umaro do? It won't open. Ooh! Wait, I didn't even bring Umaro for the final battle. That's so cool that he's in the credits. But he carves a path. Go. Both buttons have to be pressed at the same time. Gao. Shortcut! Take shortcut! Locke. I like how they did Locke and Celes one after the other because obviously we shipped the two of them. The place is breaking apart. Oh no. Oh no, Celes, don't fall. And Locke's holding on to her. I will let go, I promise. Aw. Oh yeah, she, where is it? Can I see it? Oh, it's the bandana. Yeah, that's Locke's bandana. That, I guess, fell off even though he's wearing the bandana in that image, but yeah, she almost sacrificed herself to save Locke's bandana. How sweet. There's Terra. Oh yeah, she's using her Esper abilities to escape, and then, you know, after defeating Kefka and the Warring Triad, the Espers and magic is going to cease to exist, and because Terra is half human, half Esper, she wonders if she'll disappear too, and her father, Maduin, says, you know, the human part will stay on and you'll survive. So, there's Realm. Come on, Grandpa! You gotta keep going, old man! Oh, no. Aw. She's getting old Grandpa all misty-eyed. Shadow. Now, this I thought was really sad. You know, after Shadow realizes that he has all these great friends in his family, he tells Interceptor to get going. And then, because Interceptor leaves, and then Shadow's right there. Baram, looks like I can finally stop running. Come and find me, alright? Like, so Shadow's just gonna stay and die? And you don't see Shadow after this. Like, when they're all in the airship, he's not there. So did Shadow really stay behind and die? What the fuck, man? That's a little annoying. Because I thought Shadow realized now that he has all these friends and companions. Strago Magus? I guess you realize that's his last name now. Come on, old man. Wait, what did he say? Come on, Strago, you can't let yourself be shut up by a bunch of kids. And you! Oh, the game thanks you for playing. So where's Shadow? He's not on the airship. Shadow stayed behind. I can't believe it. So after that, another thing too, if we go back a ways, go back in the video, and you saw like how desolate the world looked in the earlier scenes, like with Sid and Celis and all that. The green has returned and the blue skies and now the rainbow, so the world is being purified. Oh, this was a side story too, where Dwayne and Katarine had a baby. Katarine was pregnant, and this was the village that Tara was looking after. And there's Seth's... Wait, who's piloting this ship? He's doing a pose over there. Don't go down, Falcon. But there it goes. You get a great cutscene here. Oh, here's, again, I was talking about the opera scene. There's the screenshot. We have the Japanese, English, French, German, Italian. There's also Korean, Chinese, and I believe Spanish. Excellent. And you see they got actual people to sing the song. And they did an excellent job. But yeah, here's the world turning green again. There's a little baby. And they're rebuilding everything. The trees are beginning to grow again. Tara has her hair blowing in the breeze. And that's it. The end. So, man, this game... even better than I remembered it being. Absolutely fantastic. You guys, if you watch this channel, you probably already know Final Fantasy X is my favorite Final Fantasy. And then 8. And I like to root for the underdogs, so I really do like 5. But man, to say that Final Fantasy VI isn't good or it's overrated or whatever, it's just not the case. This game deserves its reputation, is an absolute masterpiece. There's a few nitpicky things I had to say here, you know, about General Leo and even at the end with Shadow. But otherwise, a fantastic game. I can't recommend it enough. Still relatively short. As I was going through the Pixel Remaster games, you know, the early ones, Final Fantasy 1 and 2 were like, what, 10-hour-long games, and then 3, I think it was 12 hours. I think 5 was like 20-something hours. This was close to 30 hours, so it's a bit longer. So, you know, now games are like 100 hours long, but this is an SNES game, and there's so much stuff to do. I didn't even get everyone to max level. I think my highest level was level 70, and then the lowest I had level 50, because I had to get the one achievement to get all the characters to level 50. I got the Platinum Trophy, too, in all these games, which was cool. And, yeah, I loved it. Can't recommend it enough. Again, if you're new, although if you're new, you know, you just got spoiled for the whole game, but if you're new to the Final Fantasy series, you know, I can't recommend enough just playing the Pixel Remaster games. They are the best way to play the games. It is a shame there's certain things that they omitted, like the Game Boy Advance versions added more dungeons, super bosses. In Final Fantasy VI, they added new summons as well, like they had the Leviathan and some others. But it does make up for it with the enhanced opera scene and having quality of life changes, such as the increased experience. So instead of grinding for an hour, you can turn the experience multiplier up to ×4 and grind for 10 minutes and gain a few levels. I think that's appropriate to use. Like, there's no shame in thinking you're cheating or anything, because it's just level grinding. You know, you always need to level grind in JRPGs, and it is helpful to do either do a multiplier or do a fast forward option, you know? So I'm happy they have the multiplier, and the game is so good. And, you know, people always talk about remaking the Final Fantasy games. They remade Final Fantasy VII with Remake, Rebirth, and there's going to be a third game. What else? Have they talked about other games? Oh, Final Fantasy IX. There's the rumors about that, right? I wouldn't be opposed to a remake of Final Fantasy VI, but only if they did it in, like, the Octopath Traveler style, in that kind of art style. They should actually do a remake, though, to expand on some of the characters and have more clarity, like with Shadow. Do more connections to the whole Clyde and Realm thing. You know, flesh them out more. And then if they added voice acting, I think that would be really good. But they don't need to make Final Fantasy VI the same way they did Final Fantasy VII Remake. You don't need to do 3 games and do the crazy HD graphics and all state-of-the-art, you know, whatever. It's fun. Like, the fact that this game is 30 years old and is still playable, still as good, if not better than I remembered, it says it all. So, you don't need to do the fancy graphics, but I wouldn't be opposed to a remake if they did that, fleshed out some more characters, you know, maybe gave some more development to General Leo and even Emperor Gestal. I didn't even talk about him at all. That's just such a non-factor because Kefka steals the show from him. And then added voice acting, which some of these characters do have English voice actors from not only the Dissidia games, but also the World of Final Fantasy, where they... Well, Terra, she's in Dissidia. I don't think Locke was ever in Dissidia, though, was he? So there's that. Yeah. Almost an hour with this one, but it needs to be done because this is just such a great game, and there's so much to talk about, and what an excellent swan song to the pixel games, moving into the 3D graphics with Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, and beyond. And then for those wondering what my next game review is going to be, I am not going to be playing Final Fantasy 7 at this time because, you know, I played 4, 5, and 6 all back-to-back, so I need a bit of a break from the Final Fantasy games. And I'm going to go back to Ys with Ys Origins, so look forward to that video, probably coming next week, but we'll see how long that game is. And for those who made it this far, thank you very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. You know, let me know who is your favorite character in Final Fantasy VI, because my favorite is definitely Celis. I like how she starts off as a villain, but has a change of heart. She has an excellent character arc. I love her. I love how her theme is sort of a leitmotif of the opera. It's like, without the lyrics, the opera song, that becomes her theme later on. And, excellent character. I also really like Cyan. He's just a badass. But, yeah, leave your favorite Final Fantasy VI character in the comments down below. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Have a great day, and we will talk to you later. Peace out.
Nighty-night.